systems of different organisms. The simplest organisms have basically a single opening. Let's see if I have, yeah. A single opening where the food goes in, and then the food spreads out through the entire body of the organism, so that every cell is kind of near the digestive opening, or is near this big they call it a gastrovascular cavity. It's kind of like a stomach, where the food is digested and absorbed into the cells. So if you were to cut the body of this flatworm in half, you would see that almost every cell is somewhat near the gastrovascular cavity where the food is, so that the food can get to each cell just by simple diffusion. And so they have to take in food and let food out through the same hole.
So it's like
wouldn't that be gross? You'd have really bad breath. Sorry, go ahead, EKM.
So it's like the open blood system kind
A
of thing?
little bit. The food goes everywhere in the body, basically.
That's a flatworm?
That's a flatworm, yeah.
I like drawing flatworms.
A more complicated digestive system is where the food goes in one end, the mouth, and comes out a different end, the anus. That's what we have, and that's what most complicated organisms have. That way you can continuously eat. Food's going in this way, and it moves in a single direction. So you can't continually eat. If food is going in one hole and it's got to come back out the same hole, you can't continuously eat. Half the time you're crapping. You see? But this way, food goes in one hole, it comes out a different hole. You can continuously eat food. And a lot of organisms, like an earthworm, kind of continuously takes in food. They crawl through the dirt. Dirt goes in one end. Dirt comes out the other end. And anything that's in the dirt is digested. So that's a more complicated way of doing it.
Why do worms have like 9 hearts?
They have this long body, and you got to get a good pump on the blood to get it all the way down to the end of the worm and all the way back. So instead of having the way their body is constructed, 9 small hearts is more efficient than one big heart, which would make the worm a lot wider. You see what I'm saying?
Can't a worm be cut up a bunch of times and still live?
Depends on the type of worm. Flatworms can do that. These little planarians here. You can cut those up and they'll regenerate. That doesn't work with earthworms. Earthworms, you cut those up, they just die.
Oh, I didn't know that. I've never done that.
They'll keep moving after you cut them in half because they have reflexes that, but as soon as all the cells die, they'll be dead.
What's that weird thing right there in the middle, like this,
That's a clitellum. That's for reproduction.
What's the two? Because they fuse, don't
they? They trade sperm. They're hermaphroditic, so they'll trade sperm with one another through that thing.
So worms.
It's got a little opening in it that sperm comes out. What's that?
Worms are all.
Not all worms, but earthworms are hermaphroditic. Some worms have separate sexes. Here's a filter feeder. A clam has an in-current siphon where water goes in, and an external siphon where water comes out, and they filter the water of their food. So there's a lot of food floating around in the water. That's what oysters do all day, or clams. They sit there and they draw water in through their body.
So they're more advanced too?
They actually, yes, they are, because they have a mouth, which is right there, and an anus, which is right there.
Okay.
And so that is a more advanced system. Okay. If you eat an oyster or a clam, you eat all of that.
What do they eat?
They filter feed. There's little things floating around in the water that are edible, little bacteria and protists and little tiny eggs and larvae and all kinds of stuff.
What are the labial palps?
Labial palps. Those are reproductive structures too. We won't learn all these parts. Shows a squid. They eat kind of like us. But and the teeth structure. The teeth structure of animals can be used for mammals can be used to tell what the mammal eats. If it's a bunch of flat teeth like this, and maybe some incisors in the front that snip things, that's a plant eater. You can tell the difference between that and this lion here with all these sharp teeth. That's a meat eater. The big canines there hold the food. Y'all know the 4 types of teeth?
No.
Incisors, canines, premolars, molars, going from front to back.
Do we need to know that?
I don't know what you need to know. Can't tell you.
So
You know everything yourself.
Sharp teeth are like meat eaters.
What's that?
Sharp teeth are meat eaters.
Sharp teeth are meat eaters, yeah. And flatter teeth are usually for eating plants. And humans have kind of a combination because we eat some meat and some plants.
So we're omnivores.
Omnivores.
When did humans start eating meat? When did we start eating meat? 'Cause
Meat started with the apes. As monkeys evolved into apes, they took to a diet of meat. And apes eat meat and fruit. Mostly fruit, but some meat.
What meat do they eat?
Oh, they'll eat anything they can catch.
Really?
Yeah, little squirrel or whatever.
Yeah.
Other monkey,
Yeah.
other apes. They'll even kill other apes and eat them.
Or do they ever like try to eat fish?
That's a good question. I don't know.
When did cooking start?
So what's that real quick sticking out in the back?
Cooking
of the,
was we'll talk about that in
Yeah.
human evolution. That was with the Homo ergaster.
real quick in the back of the skull, like right behind the jaw. No, back to the human skull. What's that bone right there sticking out behind that
Here?
one? Yeah.
Styloid process.
What's that?
Take anatomy next year if you want to learn all the bones.
Why are there cracks all over the human skull?
Those are sutures where the bones have grown together.
So that's in everyone's?
The holes are for nerves and blood vessels to go through.
Does that specific, whatever that bone just named earlier, does that like serve a specific purpose?
Yeah, muscles attached to that to help move the jaws and tongue and stuff.
The mandible.
Yeah.
Do you know the only bone that's not attached to another bone?
The hyoid?
Like right here.
Okay, let's talk about the structure of the digestive system. That's for today. You take food in through the mouth. There's 3 salivary glands there that squirt digestive enzymes and mucus onto the food. And that moistens the food, and it starts breaking down carbohydrates. There's an enzyme called amylase that breaks the carbohydrates up molecularly. And I'm going to show you the digestion in video here in a minute of carbohydrates. It's very interesting. You also chew the food up with your teeth. And then the food goes back this way and is swallowed and goes down the esophagus. That's a tube that's about a couple feet long that leads to your stomach. There's a little flap of tissue right there. Does anyone know what it's called from previous studies?
Separates the windpipe and the
Yeah, the
Yeah.
epiglottis.
epiglottis.
It closes down over the windpipe so that the food doesn't go down your windpipe.
Is that why people say down the wrong way?
Mhm.
People say what?
Down
Like,
the wrong
that
path.
went down the wrong
Down the wrong tube is down the windpipe.
Wait, is it, when people say that, like, do it actually go down the wrong?
It could, yeah, and you have a way to clear your windpipe. It's called coughing. And so that's often if you suck some food down there, you can cough and it'll kick it out. If the piece is so big that coughing doesn't release it, then you'll choke and die. And that's what the Heimlich maneuver is all
Oh,
about.
okay.
Yeah.
How does the Heimlich maneuver help you?
If you push up like this on your diaphragm, which is a muscle here, and that pushes up air that might force the thing out. Sometimes it doesn't, and the person does die.
That's by Dr. Heimlich.
I had to learn how to do it. We'll CPR.
So the food goes down and it gets in the stomach, and the stomach is down there, and it has digestive juices of its own. The main digestive enzyme is called pepsin, and that breaks down proteins. And the stomach is also quite acidic. It's got a lot of acid in it. And the acid kills anything in your food that's alive. Now, Now, every time you take a bite of food, you probably don't know this, but you swallow hundreds of millions of bacteria that are on the food, and they're all alive, and they could all kill you, or they can't all kill you, but a lot of them could multiply inside you and kill you. So that has to be dealt with, and that's what this acid is all about. Stomach acid, very important in keeping you from infection.
So how do like animals that don't have all that survive?
They do.
So everyone has it.
Yeah, they have stomachs.
Even like
with
the most simple ones.
acids. Well, there's probably other ways to take it. There's white blood cells and all that crawl around and kill bacteria too. So there's other ways to take care of it. But the stomach is very old evolutionarily.
What's that thing?
This thing right here?
No.
This?
No, little, yeah.
That?
Yeah.
That's part of the liver. This liver is a big organ here that creates some digestive, a digestive juice called bile. You ever heard of bile?
Yeah.
Bile is a digestive chemical that's stored in the gallbladder, which is right there, kind of underneath the liver. And the liver is also used to detoxify the blood. Any poisons that are swallowed that get into the bloodstream make their way to the liver, and the liver tears those up. So your liver allows you to be able to eat some things that are quite poisonous to a lot of organisms, like caffeine. Caffeine is a chemical that's made by plants to keep insects from eating the plant. It'll kill insects. Won't kill us because our liver tears it up. Isn't that cool?
Well, alcohol.
Alcohol the same way. That'll kill a lot of organisms, but it won't kill us.
Oh, that's why you like liver disease.
So when it creates
Yeah, if you drink a lot of alcohol all the time, you're working your liver too much, and you can cause liver disease.
when it creates the bile, does that like go into whatever? Is that part of the digestive system?
Yeah, the bile goes to the gallbladder, is stored there, and then the gallbladder squirts it out into the intestine. And so that's what this big curly thing in here is. It's called the small intestine. It's not really, it's small in width, but it's very long in length. It's like 23 feet long or something like that. The barbarians used to hang their enemies by their intestines from trees. And that would keep the other people from wanting to fight them when they saw such a sight. But the intestines are there. What happens after the stomach does a little bit of the digestion, it squirts the food into the intestine. And the intestine is lined with millions of little hairs called villi that increase the surface area for absorption of the nutrients.
What are the hairs called?
Villi, V-I-L-L-I. I'll show you a picture of them in a minute. I'm just kind of doing an overview here.
How do the nutrients go into the liver?
Well, what happens, these little villi, they look like little hairs. They're extensions that come off the inside of the small intestine. And they have blood vessels in them. I need a red colored marker. But they have blood vessels inside them. And the molecules are absorbed into the blood. And then the blood goes to the liver. And the liver will tear up any molecules that are bad. Does that make sense?
Wait, so it takes up the nutrients from the little hairs and goes to the liver?
Yeah, the little hairs on the inside of the small intestine have blood vessels in them. And the blood goes from the intestine to the liver. So any poisons that are in the blood go straight to the liver, and the liver will tear them
The
up.
liver's the filter, right?
It is. It's like a big filter.
So it takes up not just the nutrients, but the bad nutrients too.
Takes up the nutrients, the poisons, everything. All the blood goes from the intestine to the liver. Yes?
Why can your liver regenerate for other organs?
Yeah, that's good that you know that. The liver's one of the only organs in the human body that will regenerate. Nobody knows why. It's just programmed to do so. And so if you lose a big piece of it, like in a surgery or an accident or something, it'll grow back and look normal several
That's why you
months
can give
or years
half
later.
your liver
That's
to
why
your
you can
dad.
give a transplant.
That's awesome.
And
Yeah,
it'll
you can
grow-
transplant a portion of the liver.
Right,
Sure
it'll
could.
grow into
That's pretty sweet.
For some reason, no other human organ does that, and scientists are studying that. If they could figure out how to regenerate a lost arm or a lost organ, that could
Is that what they?
greatly extend the human life.
Isn't that what
I
they
mean, if your heart goes bad, just have it regrow. Wow, you could live forever that
Isn't
way.
that-
So that's one thing they're working on.
Why
So-
they do stem cell research?
Stem cells are cells that can grow into any kind of cell.
Okay.
So, you know, if you take some stem cells from like an embryo and you inject them into a damaged area, maybe the area will grow back.
Didn't
We should research
Oh, wait, Emery.
So when it goes into the small intestine, it takes out all the blood and takes it to the liver, like every part of the blood that's in the intestine.
Well, blood travels through vessels, right? So the blood travels into the small intestine, gathers the nutrients, and then into the liver,
Oh, okay.
and delivers the nutrients there and the poisons. I'm not answering that.
And so without a liver, would we not be able to eat at all, and would we die, or would we just not? Be
Well,
able
if
to
you
eat
ate
those
anything
things?
that had some poisons in it, it wouldn't be broken down, and it would end up killing you. Yeah. So
Okay.
like caffeine would kill you.
All right, and one more thing is like, didn't we? I don't know if I heard it in this class, but there was someone that underwent like an arm transplant, like part of their arm.
Okay.
Like someone literally had an arm stitched to them, and they learned how to start controlling their arm. I saw that somewhere.
Yeah, you can do that.
You can like reattach them.
Yeah, you can reattach a lost limb, and if it's somebody else's, as long as they have the same matching
It's like reattaching your finger.
proteins as you do, then your body won't fight it. You can't just take anybody's arm and stick it on you, because if they don't match your genetics, then your white blood cells will attack it like it's foreign.
Like would they like? Okay, that's a stupid question. But would they like take a living arm if someone like I don't know donated their bodies to medicine, like an organ donor?
Yeah.
And if they died, but they some parts of the body were still living, they like cut off the arm and then freeze it.
Yeah,
and
they could do that.
They could
Yeah.
freeze
They
the
do
arm
that,
and
and
then
some people
bring it
have
back.
like tattoos
Yeah,
that they get
they
put
can
on
do
their
that.
arms from other people.
Oh.
It's really cool.
This is the large intestine, and after the small intestine, there's no nutrients left. It's all been absorbed by the bloodstream. So the waste goes into the large intestine. That's also called the colon. And in the large intestine, the water is recovered from the system. There's a whole lot of water that's been secreted from cells along the entire tract to keep the food moving. It's very watery. And that water has to be recovered. So it's recovered in the colon here. And so by the end of the journey, the rectum darn near killed him. That's a proctology joke. Anyway, in the rectum here is where all that waste builds up, and that's feces, or doo-doo, or number 2, or whatever you want to call it. And that comes out the anus after you're done. Now, one of the things in the colon here, you have, or something of note, in the colon you have living trillions of bacteria that reside in your colon, and they just sit in there, and it's a mutualistic relationship. We feed them because they can eat some of the stuff that we can't digest, and in return they make a couple vitamins for us, vitamins B and K. I always remember it's B and K because that stands for Burger King, and Burger King gives you diarrhea. So it's easy to remember.
B and K?
That is part of the colon. Vitamins B and K are produced by the large intestine because, by the way, if you have diarrhea, it's because the large intestine isn't working so well, and what your body's trying to do is rid your body of bad stuff that might be in your digestive system. So what it does is it just speeds up the muscular contractions that move the food through the system so that the large intestine doesn't have time to take back the water. And that's why diarrhea comes out, it's just mostly water. And then to clear the upper part of your digestive system, you vomit. And that clears all of the what's in the stomach and the small intestine. The upper parts of the small intestine are cleared by vomiting, and the colon and the rest of the small intestine is cleared by diarrhea, and that clears out your whole system. So that's why you do those things when you're sick. Yes?
So the colon and the large intestine are the same thing?
Yes, the colon is the large intestine.
And,
So why is it called two different things?
Just the same reason I have two names. Mr. Willis and DJ Grandmaster T. Some things are called two
So the
names.
colon is the large intestine.
The colon is the
It's
large
not like
intestine.
a part of it.
what's the
The
bacteria?
colon is the large intestine.
What's the bacteria called in the colon?
E. coli. You ever heard of them?
That's the bacteria.
Escherichia coli is
Okay.
mostly the bacterium in the large intestine. Actually, there's probably about 1,000 different species in there, but most of them are E. coli.
And where does the water go that's small?
It goes back into the bloodstream.
So where do those bacteria come from? Are they just like allowed to get in there?
They when you're born, you don't have any.
Yeah.
And when you eat, some of the bacteria make it through and end up residing in your large intestine.
Does the small intestine
So
have
like
two names?
No, the small intestine doesn't keep bacteria in it. They're usually cleaned out of the small intestine by white blood cells. There can be some in there, but usually
So
there's
it
not.
could just be any bacteria.
What's that?
It could just be like.
Could be any, yeah, and they've been finding out recently that each person has a different, it's called your, they call it the normal flora of your digestive system is the word that they use to describe the normal bacteria that are there in the large intestine. But they find out that different people have different flora. So it's actually a whole study. There's a whole science devoted to studying large intestinal bacteria, which is basically studying crap. So, because half of your doo-doo is these bacteria. So basically that's what these scientists do all day. They have animals or people go into big jars and they sift through it. Sounds rather disgusting, doesn't it? Imagine if that was your job.
So when you throw up what's in your stomach and small intestine?
Yeah, stomach and the upper part of the small intestine.
The duodenum.
Yeah, it's called the duodenum. You're right. The food is kind of squeezed through. This kind of shows the squeezing action that moves the food through the intestine. And I think I have a little video of it here. It's called peristalsis.
When we swallow, the tongue pushes the food back into the throat, or pharynx. The pharynx leads to two passages, one to the stomach and the other to the lungs. When we swallow, a valve momentarily closes the opening to the lungs, so that food must go to the esophagus. Occasionally, if we talk or laugh while eating, food does go down the wrong passage, blocking the flow of air to the lungs. If the passage is not cleared through coughing or other means, we choke. Food passes from the oral cavity to the stomach through the esophagus, pushed quickly along by wave-like contractions of muscle. This kind of muscular action is called peristalsis. The food passes through another valve to enter the stomach, where it is stored temporarily.
See, what they do is they give you food that has this dye in it that shows up on an x-ray. And so that they can, without cutting into your body, they can see what's going on by x-raying you while you're eating. And then they can see if there's any problems.
A lot of X-ray.
I think it tastes really bad. So it's like disgusting. Yeah.
We had to do it.
You did?
Look at inside the stomach. What it looks like.
How do you get like stomach ulcer?
An ulcer is when the wall of the stomach has been eaten away. It's caused by a bacterium, like an infection.
I thought it
It
was
starts eating away at the wall of your stomach.
It's
But
not
you could
stomach
get
acid.
stomach ulcers from
Well,
stress.
the acid that your stomach releases once the bacteria is eaten away a little patch, the acid then starts eating away at it. So the acid contributes. But it's really a bacterium. It's called Heliobacter pylori. I studied it in college.
I thought mucus has an effect on that.
Well, mucus prevents the stomach from being eaten away normally. But when you have this infection, it'll eat through the mucus.
How do you get this infection?
Oh, I don't know. Some people get it and some don't. That's a good question. I don't know.
Does that really hurt?
Yeah, it hurts. Stomach ulcers hurt. And you can die from stomach ulcers because they can bleed. And then you start bleeding. If the wall of the stomach gets eaten up enough, there are blood vessels in it. Blood comes into the stomach, and then the blood is digested like it was food. And so all your blood gets digested. And how this usually happens is a person feels tired because they're losing blood, it's being digested, and they go to sleep. They say, I feel tired, I'm going to sleep, because you're losing blood from the brain, and you die in your sleep. Have you ever heard a person died in their sleep? That could be because of some sort of internal bleeding.
How big is your stomach?
It's about the size of a fist, or maybe a little bit bigger, but it can expand. So when it's empty, it's maybe that big, and when it's full, it's gets a lot bigger.
Oh, I remember that question.
Yeah.
Okay, so I picture like when you're like eating food, like squeezing down your esophagus. When you like take a drink of water, does it just like go straight down to your stomach?
Yeah. Water just gotta fall straight down.
But does it push the food down with it? Or does it kind of go like around the food?
Don't carry food down with it. This is the one I wanted to show you. Watch this stomach acid experiment.
If we place a strip of beef into gastric juice and watch it for about 1 hour, we can see the effect pepsin has on protein.
Isn't stomach acid one of the most corrosive acids?
See, well, it's I don't know. It gets down to a pH of 2. There's a lot stronger acids. But see, the meat is a combination of protein and fat. And the stomach acid has the enzyme is called pepsin, and pepsin breaks down protein. It doesn't break down fat. So that's the fat that was left in the meat. See? When you eat meat, it's got fat in it that you usually don't see, but it's in there. Isn't that cool?
So is that why like people get fat?
Well, you get fat from eating food. And the food is either burned for energy by your mitochondria or it's stored as fat. Anything you eat, sugar, protein, and fat can be stored as fat. The body will change it around, will change
Where do they store
the molecular nature of it. Do you remember how I showed you how the hexagonal sugars can be changed into the long fats? Remember that? And your liver is the organ that does that. So your liver changes things. If you don't need protein, if you're eating a bunch of protein but you don't need it right away, your liver will change the protein into fat.
But how does it get out of the liver and like into your body?
The liver releases it. It comes in the liver through the blood. The liver grabs it, changes it around, and then releases it. And if it's a fat molecule, it'll end up being caught up by the rest of your fat cells and stored.
And so like when that thing like with the meat did, and it was only left with fat, does that do the same thing?
No, because then that goes on to the small intestine, and the small intestine digests the fat.
The hairs ingest
Hold
it?
on. So here's the stomach, that digests protein. The small intestine here will digest the fat. So we're going to break down the fat next. Yes.
So after digested, like, what comes out? What's left? What isn't digested? You know, what's excreted?
There's cellulose is one thing your body can't digest. Plant material that goes all the way through.
Then
there's some other things.
Isn't that why herbivores have 2 stomachs?
That's right. They digest the plant material.
How's that?
why do we salad then?
Oh, it kind of cleans out your system, even though you can't digest it. It kind of scrapes the walls of your
Fiber,
your organs. You have fiber. It's good for you.
So when you eat a salad, you can't really digest it.
Most of it you're not digesting.
So is that
Some
why
of it, like you can digest the tomatoes and the little ham bits and
Why?
and all that, because they got a lot of sugars in them.
Can you get any
But
calories?
you can't digest the cellulose, which
So
is
that's
what
why-
leaves are mostly made of.
So that's why it's
So
smart
the-
to eat salad, because you're not gonna take much from it.
You're not getting many nutrients from it, that's correct.
Oh.
But so where does the cellulose go? Into the liver?
Whoop.
So it
Out your
doesn't.
butt.
So that's why vegetarians are so skinny.
That's why what?
Vegetarians are so skinny because like they don't have like anything in their stomach.
Oh, that's why people.
That's correct.
That's why people who eat meat typically live longer, right? Isn't that?
Well, vegetarians, they can't produce vitamin
No,
B12.
they said.
I was right.
They don't get enough vitamin B12,
Yeah.
right?
They say that people. I forget where I heard, but they say people.
People who just eat meat live longer?
No, not just eat meat. Eat vegetables
Some
and
sort of
meat.
meat.
Well, that's
Like
what
live
most
longer
everybody
than
does.
vegetarians.
Yeah.
Most everybody eats
Well, I
both.
mean, that's the
But, like,
vegetarians, they don't get enough
vegetarians-
vitamin
What?
B12
If
unless
you
they take
eat
a
meat
supplement.
and
Yeah,
vegetables,
that's-
you live
that's-
longer.
Meat's the only thing where you get vitamin
That's what I was getting at. I
B12.
didn't mean people that
Not
just,
necessarily.
that just eat meat.
I'm gonna start being a vegetarian
Yeah.
today. No, I already ate chicken.
This is what the inside of the small intestine looks like. Do you remember I said it had little things that look like hairs? Are you also getting those?
I am now.
The inside of the small intestine has little extensions. Those are the villi that I talked about earlier. That they look like little hairs or little fingers. And so the inside of the small intestine looks kind of like a carpet. And if you look up close at the villi, here's a single villus. You see that there's blood vessels going through it. See the blood vessels there? And that's what picks up the nutrients. So the villi absorb, through the walls of the villi, they absorb the nutrients from the food into the villi. These cells right here that are on the villus have a lot of enzymes too on their surface that break down the food. So I'm going to show you a little digestion video. This kind of shows
To
what the
track or a
intestine
straight
looks like.
tube like a worm, we would have to be
That's a camera that they've stuck down.
peristalsis continues its conveyor belt roll, moving the chyme out of the stomach
This is
through
in
this
the
tiny
stomach,
non-return
and that hole
valve.
leads to the
Each
intestine.
contraction forces less than a teaspoonful of chyme on into the top of the small intestine, the duodenum.
There's the inside of the small
Here,
intestine.
the inner surface of the gut changes to a moist, velvety lining. It's specially designed to absorb the broken down constituents of food.
You can't see the little hairs, but they're microscopic. They're little. It's like felt almost. There they are.
These tiny finger-like projections, called villi, increase the area for absorbing nutrients.
And that's what it's for. It increases the surface area. Just like a towel has a bath towel that you dry yourself off with has a bunch of little hairs, that increases the surface area for absorption so that the towel can take in as much water as possible. The same thing with the inside of your intestines. You got all these little hairs to increase the surface area.
So that's really important.
Yeah, surface area is important to get. You want to be able to absorb as much as you can in as small as area as you can. So you need lots of surface area.
Pancreas.
Oh, by the way, there's another organ that you should probably know about. It's called the pancreas. It sits right here connected to the first part of the small intestine. And the pancreas squirts a whole bunch of enzymes as well into the small intestine to break down the food. There's the gallbladder there. That squirts bile. And the bile and the pancreatic juices go into the small intestine, and that helps break down the fats and the nucleic acids and the proteins that have not been digested yet.
In the bile?
And the carbohydrates. All 4 types of organic molecules are broken down in the small intestine.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah,
Now, is that big red thing up top the liver or the gallbladder? Because I thought
that's
that-
the liver.
So,
That's the gallbladder.
okay, so if you could say either way, the bile comes from the liver or the gallbladder.
Yeah, the bile comes from the liver. It's made in the liver and it's stored in the gallbladder. The gallbladder is just a storage area for bile.
You can live without it, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say people get.
Yeah, a lot of people get gallstones, which are big stones that develop in the gallbladder. And the doctor, my dad, was a surgeon that he did mostly gallbladder removals. That was one of his main things. And he'd go in there and you just cut it right there, and you can pull that thing out. And what'll happen is the body, this is another organ that can sort of regenerate. The body will grow kind of a new bulb that acts like a gallbladder. And you won't be able to digest your fats because the bile helps digest fats. You won't be able to digest the fats as well after you have your gallbladder removed, but you can still do a good enough job at it where you can survive.
No, go ahead. No, I forget what I was going to ask.
Wait, you said that something about carbohydrates. Did you say it breaks down the carbohydrates?
Yeah, you remember the 4 types of organic molecules? Carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, nucleic acids. They're all digested in the small intestine.
So the white things, the pancreas.
This is the pancreas,
And
and that squirts out digestive enzymes that squirt out into the small intestine to digest the food. Yes.
How exactly do gallbladder stones?
They're not sure why gallstones form, but they just know that they do.
Could you live without your pancreas?
Yeah.
But
People get that cancer.
You can't live without your pancreas.
Yeah,
You can live without your appendix, right? But not your
Your
pancreas.
appendix you can live without, but not your pancreas.
You need the, yeah.
I know.
Let me show you this one video of this one digestive video real quick. I know we only have a minute left. This shows how carbohydrates are digested.
Carbohydrates are an important source of building materials and energy for the body. 3 classes of carbohydrates are commonly ingested as food. They are monosaccharides, such as glucose, galactose, and fructose. Disaccharides, such as sucrose, lactose, and maltose. And polysaccharides, such as starch and cellulose. Starch and disaccharides are broken down into their component monosaccharides by a series of hydrolysis reactions. This process of breaking down food into the raw materials needed to build and power our bodies is called digestion. The digestive system includes the organs of the digestive tract and accessory digestive organs. The digestive tract is a continuous muscular tube, open at both ends. It includes the mouth, pharynx, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, and large intestine. The accessory digestive organs are the teeth, tongue, salivary glands, liver, gallbladder, and pancreas. The first step in carbohydrate digestion takes place in the mouth. Saliva is secreted into the mouth by the salivary glands and mixed with the food as it is chewed. Saliva contains the enzyme salivary amylase. This enzyme removes disaccharide units from one end of the long branch starch molecules. Cellulose and disaccharides are unaffected. Salivary amylase continues to act on starch molecules as the food moves down the esophagus and into the stomach. In the stomach, the food is mixed with highly acidic stomach secretions to form chyme. Stomach acid inactivates salivary amylase. Enzymes in the stomach break it down. From the stomach, the chyme is passed on to the small intestine. Here the chyme is mixed with pancreatic juice secreted by the pancreas. Pancreatic juice neutralizes the stomach acid in the chyme. In addition, pancreatic juice contains the enzyme pancreatic amylase. Like salivary amylase, pancreatic amylase also removes disaccharides from the starch molecule. More and more starch is broken down into disaccharide units as the carbohydrates move through the small intestine. Eventually, starch is no longer present.
We need about 1 more minute. I'll finish that with you tomorrow. Look over chapter 36. Read as much as you can.
What does the